railroads, those 5 railroads, the only switch I actually made was when I went from New Haven to New York Central. From then on, it was merger. So there was a trainee on the Central, there was a fireman on the New Haven. I went over as a management trainee with the Central. But we're here to talk about Lee Beaujon, and Lee Beaujon will be 90 in September, born 1929. And he was born right here in Canaan. Although the hospital was Great Barrington, there was no hospital in Canaan at that time, 1929. And he lived in a couple different places in Canaan that were right near the tracks. And this was 1929, but by the time he was a kid, there was still some traffic on the CNE, which is the line going across here. It wasn't severed until 1938, but not much. It had been, it had already faded away with trucks and highways and so on, buses, and milk trucks. They lost all the milk business. CNE used to make a lot of money on milk, but that went away. But there were still local freights running here, and his father was a clerk at the post office, not a railroad man. His mother was a substitute teacher. But in 1932, they moved to a house right near the tracks, and when he was 6, he'd go down and pester the crew because they'd tie up the engine at night. They had mogul engines, K1 mogul engines. By this time, it was New Haven. 1927 was when CNE was merged into New Haven. But the New Haven controlled it after 1904. They just never changed the name. So it was already New Haven when Lee was born. But all the men were still CNE men, so there's plenty of CNE men. And it says the yard service on this section of CNE have been reduced to a local freight that ran 4 or 5 days each week, to and from Canaan and Millerton in return, plus to and from Canaan and Norfolk Summit in return. So they didn't go all the way to Hartford anymore. The main line, of course, went Hartford to Maybrook, when it was a through run. But passenger service ended in 1927, so that was before his time. But during all this time, the Berkshire line, north-south, had plenty of passenger service on the New Haven. We're talking about the CNE at this point. And so Lee was just a CNE fan right from the get-go. But by the time he hired out, he was old enough to hire out, the CNE wasn't, they weren't hiring anybody there because it was so run down. Shot. So he hired out in 1947, as soon as he got out of high school. He hired out as a clerk, agent, operator with the New Haven right in this building here. And spent the rest of his time on the railroad. Except he was in the military in 1953 for 4 years. Like all of us, it was a draft back then. So he was a spare agent operator. He worked not only here, but at every station up and down the Berkshire. But there weren't any operators left on the CNE by that time. So he worked up and down the Berkshire line through here in Norwalk, Pittsfield. Most of the stations had operators at that time. And he's a new guy, so he's the spare. Whenever everybody's sick, the cook's off, anything like that. But when he started in Canaan here, 18 to 20 people were working right here in Canaan, besides the train crews. There were clerks, agent operators, gate tenders, signal maintainers, trackmen. It's a lot of jobs for a town this size. And it's, as I say, it's not even counting the train crews going through. And, but the through service and the last through service on the CNE went away in 1938. Then it was just the locals out to Lakeville, East Canaan, that sort of thing. And I think, Pete, did you talk about Lakeville this morning?
Pardon?
Have you talked about Lakeville?
A little bit. I said I've been over in 3-hour run and all that.
Yeah, and I worked at Lakeville also. We only went over as needed. There was, I think it was feed and a fuel outfit over there.
You want to take a chair and sit
You
in
might
front
go,
maybe?
might go 2 or 3
You want
days
to
a
take a
week.
chair and sit in front?
We come out of
so you can
Danbury.
push the chair?
The local freight always went as far as
Let
here.
him.
And the local freight from Pittsfield came down to here. We'd exchange cars, and if we needed to, we'd go out to Lakeville. Like I say, maybe twice a week. Nice scenic ride, but it wasn't a lot of money to it. So
What about the loads that came in from down south? You used to get citrus pulp, beet pulp, used to come in by the carload, we used to unload them.
where'd you unload them?
Right here in town.
Yeah,
Get 'em-
well, yeah,
Get a
well,
carload and bring it home.
Yeah, it'd be a team tractor.
So that was a team track?
Yeah, a team track anybody can unload from. The name comes from the horse and team wagon.
Yeah.
They come up and anybody can unload. Team track is a common unloading track. And you still have team tracks today, but not here, but it's still a term that's in use.
Oh, so it's like a longshore.
Yeah, you load your own stuff out of the boxcar. And it used to be a horse and team with a wagon that you put it on, that's why they call it a team track. There hasn't been a horse and team for a while, but yeah, that's how that would have come in. But there was plenty of freight in Berkshire in 1947. There was still a lot of freight there.
We were doing this in the 60s.
Yep, still was. So, yeah, New Haven had parlor cars, one a week up to Pittsfield and back, right up till the Penn Central merger, 1969. They ran a parlor car and the passenger train to Pittsfield. That's pretty classy. You went up Friday night, came back Sunday.
I thought mostly like, the creamery or milk operation.
Well, that all went away in the 20s because it went to trucks. Like Hopewell used to have a huge creamery and all that sort of thing. It all went away because that really hurt the CNE. The local passenger traffic went away to cars. The milk went to trucks. And after World War I, the through service back and forth Hartford, Maybrook, they started running it via the New Haven down to Danbury on the Maybrook line. So there really wasn't much left. And the Depression, it went away altogether. But here the agent also handled Western Union telegrams. Before email and stuff like that, the station was where you got your telegram. And that's where, and one of the people he hired out with started with the CNE, it was an old CNE man, in 1898, the year the Spanish-American War started. The day he hired out, they blew up the battleship Maine in Havana Harbor. So that's going back a ways. Now he's the old ever. But well, he has a bunch of names of operators and so on here. And I don't know, is anybody old timer from Canaan here? Because this wouldn't mean much. Anybody, he gives names of the gatemen, how guys got to work and so on, but it's nothing that would apply really to us now. And when the line was abandoned out to Norfolk Summit, the telegraph wires were still in use. The track was still in, so the maintainer for the wires had a gas-powered motor car, and he could still use it. That was really your last service, and there wasn't any service at all. It just
Where was the summit in Norfolk?
the summit in Norfolk was right about where the station was, right in the center of town. But you come past Haystack Mountain,
Yeah.
and you go up into the center of town. Then there was a tunnel there, which is gone now, and it goes back down after that. And Norfolk gets more snow than any place else around here. You may know that. We used to hike there on the CNE. It's 8 miles to Norfolk. We'd hike out of here, it'd be flurries, and it'd be a foot of snow when we get to Norfolk. I don't know what some freak of nature or something. And they had two tricks of gate tender. By trick, of course, I mean shift. The railroad saw his first trick, second trick, third trick. First shift, second shift, third shift. I don't know why they call it tricks. Then I asked him, I said, how about describing the Berkshire passenger service and freight service through here? And he says in the fall of 1947, which is when he started working, there were 4 passenger trains, 2 in each direction weekdays. That's New York to Pittsfield. They change engines, they're electric as far as Danbury, change engines to steam at Danbury to Pittsfield. The steam with the 1300 class 462 engines, I-2 class, medium Pacific. And southbound out of Pittsfield, there was one through here about 8:15 and another one at 3:15. In the summer, there was a later train out of New York, which you get to Canaan about 8:45 on Fridays, and we go back on Sundays. That's the same as the parlor car we had up till the 60s. It was for the weekend traffic up to the Berkshire. Saturday service was the exception, about the same as the weekend. And Sunday train, 4 trains southbound, 2 trains northbound, and 145 through Canaan, 149, and then 138 coming up here every Sunday had 2 engines, double header, because it was an uneven number, there were 2 trains to bring down. So it was always double-headed, you didn't need the power, that's how they got the engine to Pittsfield. And the freight service was a Canaan local, which came out of Danbury, which is just like it was when Pete and I were working. And get up here about midday, we go out to Lakeville if it needed, and then back to Danbury, tie up in Danbury. Crew starts out of Danbury. The other one started in Pittsfield. Crew started up there, came down here, and did the same thing. Reversed, went back up to Pittsfield. And this is all 1947. The night freight, Danbury to State Line, New York, was RI-2, it's called. Went through Canaan about 5 a.m. and with 2 locomotives normally, a 482 and a 210-2. And it would go up to Risings, which is north of here. Then the branch of State Line went off and connected with the Boston and Albany at the State Line. But the head engine, double-header, the head engine would only go to Risings. They'd cut off the 482, and then the train would proceed to State Line with just the 210-2. And the 482 would come back light. And going south, the train would come through here about 7 or 8 p.m. with just the 1 engine, going back to Danbury. And RI-2 was a big freight, it usually had like 100 cars. But coming through here, that's pretty impressive. When it went to diesels, it always had 3 units. Until the State Line branch was abandoned, and that finished it off. But that was long after Lee's time.
When you say the numbers, are you talking about the wheels? That's the wheel designation, correct?
Well, RI-2 you mean? RI-2 is, so I should have specified that. R is Danbury, I is State Line. So it's going from Danbury to State Line.
No, when you say the engine, when you talk about the engines,
The
you're
462?
Yeah, 462.
Yeah, that has 4 leading wheels,
Yeah.
6 drivers, 3 axles, and a 2-wheel trailing truck.
Okay.
And on the freight, the head engine was a 482, the freight engine is bigger, and the second engine, the road engine, was a 210-2. That's the heaviest engine.
That's a big.
Yeah, that's a big engine. The 3200s, they came up here for years, and they were a Maybrook engine also. That's, matter of fact, that's mainly where they went. And the locals were a 260, just a 2-wheel trailing truck, 6 drivers. And when I say 6, that's 3 axles. So
Where did they make those?
they were made, a lot of the New Havens and CNEs were made in Providence. There was a Rhode Island Locomotive Works, which that shut down around 1905, and they were made up in Schenectady at Alco, American Locomotive Company, which lasted right up to into the 50s. They built diesels, but they eventually failed. And then some were built by Baldwin in Philadelphia. Some were built by Rogers in Paterson, New Jersey. In the early days, it didn't take too big a shop to build a steam locomotive because they weren't that big. But when they got up to something like a 210-2, you couldn't build that just in a machine shop. You had to have a really big factory. There were just a few builders at the end. It was Baldwin in Philadelphia, Alco in Schenectady, and Lima Locomotive Works in Ohio. That was the big 3 at the end of steam.
So how long were we producing steel for them? Was any of our, because we made up here, Salisbury iron, went to those places to make the wheels and stuff, yeah?
Yeah, but that I can't answer. I don't know where they got their steel because they could have gone to Providence. It's not that far. But they were still building in Providence. When did the iron shut down around here?
In the 20s, I think.
20s, yeah. I don't know. Then, of course, the locomotives.
They didn't make steel.
You wanna repeat your question again?
I was just wondering how, the steel that went into these engines, when they were building the engines, we made steel here, right, at Beckley
No,
Furnace?
they made iron here.
Iron, that's what I mean, iron. That went into making wheels, Salisbury Iron
No,
Works.
no steel.
We didn't make the iron?
No steel.
Alright, but iron.
Iron. Charcoal. They used charcoal, they made iron.
Right,
They stopped in 1923.
yeah,
That's the end of it.
They could use that for wheels.
for wheels,
For
that's,
freight car wheels, not
Right.
locomotive wheels, but freight car wheels used to be cast
Iron was made till 1923.
Yeah.
Steel was never made here.
right,
One of the Hollies went over to, I'm trying to think, we're in, by Albany, just north of Rensselaer. Started the Bessemer process there.
Vernon Iron Works.
But, he didn't wanna do it here, and they didn't have enough, they need big lakes. They need big sources of water. And here the streams are small for the most part, they can't use them. So the Bessemer process takes lots of water.
Oh, it's a
And
huge-
you
it's a
see,
huge
like
process.
Gary, Indiana, where US Steel is, all the material comes in by boat or by railroad, goes out by railroad. And it's right on Lake Michigan. That's steel country.
Yep.
Yeah, this was not steel, and the cast iron wheels could crack. So by the teens, they were all gone too. They went to steel freight car wheels. So I don't know where the iron went after that. If you're
But on some of the rail cars, you can still see Salisbury on the
They never made steel here.
I know that, but
Never.
didn't they made iron?
They made
correct?
iron, but they didn't,
And this pig iron went into making wheels for the cars.
they're made out of iron.
Okay. And that's the Salisbury brand that you see on the wheels came from this area.
They're made in Lime Rock.
Yeah.
yeah, but
Barnum and
not-
Richards.
You don't see that anymore though. I mean, on a new car.
Well, not on new ones,
No,
but on
but
the older
like in the
ones.
Danbury Museum. sure,
But
it's-
in the early 1920s, they went from using cast iron wheels to steel wheels.
Okay.
In the 1890s, they went from iron track to steel track.
Okay.
Because as they got more steel capacity, they started using it. They started realizing that steel's really good. Why use iron when you can use steel? It'll last longer.
Yeah.
I mean, they did a lot here for 200 years. The population of the area depended on the amount of iron they produced. It drove everything. It was a big driver, but the time ran out. You
Yeah.
can only run things on charcoal for so long. Everybody else is using coke.
Yeah, iron got used less and less for the railroad. The steel took over. But like the Poughkeepsie Bridge is iron, except that it was strengthened in 1918 for these 10 drivered engines, then the whole thing is steel as well. So you look at the Poughkeepsie Bridge, it looks like a double exposure photo, because there's two sets of girders of everything. One, the original is iron, but it wasn't, it was strong, but it wasn't strong enough for a 10 drivered engine. It wasn't the iron's fault. So then they strengthened it up. But the iron has an advantage that it forms an oxide and then doesn't rust through.
Right.
Whereas steel, that'll rust all the way through, except these new, by RER or something like that, it forms an oxide. But iron had that advantage, but it could break, it was more brittle than steel, the wheels would split and so on. Have you ever heard the term for car knocker, for a car inspector? So anybody who knows the road here, we used to call a car inspector who checks the air brakes and so on before a train leaves, they'd call him a car knocker. And the reason is, in the days of iron wheels, he had a long-handled hammer, and he'd go on a passenger train, he'd hammer every wheel, and it would ding. If it went clunk, it was cracked, and he had to cut the car out. So he knocked every wheel. So even now, today, they call them car knockers, and that hasn't happened since, in 100 years. The guys that move engines around the yard, they call a hostler, and that's from horses. So the old nicknames of the railroad die hard.
But like during the American Revolution, Salisbury's where all the cannons were made.
Yep.
It was far away from the British couldn't come up here. And they made cannons, they made chain, they didn't make the chain across, they made one chain across the Hudson. The second one was made somewhere in New York State. But the iron industry went over towards Pine Plains. I mean, Dover has a furnace. Millerton had a furnace. Mount Riga has a furnace. They had furnaces all over here. This whole area is where all the iron ore comes. The New York, Connecticut border going northbound. That's basically where all the iron, the good iron ore is. That's why they had the materials. And they also had more iron workers here than they had in England somehow. I think that was, they kind of smuggled some out of England to get them to build up the industry here. So by the time of the Revolutionary War, there were more people making cannons and stuff here than there were in England. Amazing.
All right, the other thing that Lee did was research rosters for the Central New England and all its predecessors. This is all stuff that we put together. Really, a lot of research, old builders' dates, stuff like that. And it's Central New England, but it actually includes 10 other railroads, because there's a bunch of predecessors. There was a Philadelphia, Reading, New England, there was a Newburgh, Dutchess in Connecticut, a bunch of different railroads, and then they all went into the CNE. Very complicated as what happened to the engines, that are renumbered, reclassified, and so on. He's got it all in here. And that's a lot of work. And it's not, I mean, I have one, Lee's got one, but when he and I keel over, it doesn't matter, because Yukon has 2 copies. So, that's where this will go too, but they're not gonna get pitched. So if you ever need, and it's something that only a technical freak like myself would be interested in, but if somebody's interested in the actual history of the locomotives in the Central New England, all its predecessors, back to the Connecticut Western, it's all in here, every single locomotive. That's a lot of work. So, and it went away in 1927, but a lot of those engines lasted after that, the later ones. The last CNE engines would have gone away in the 40s. So they were let New Haven by then. So the other thing is that Lee says that some of his railroad photos that were taken around here, both what he took and his collection, are in a historical society here, and I don't know if anybody's familiar with this, the recently opened Canaan History Center, 115 Main Street. Anybody familiar with that? It's just,
I'm familiar, Jack. I'm familiar, Jack.
Yeah, okay, well, it's.
Yeah, I know Catherine Boughton that runs it also.
And it's, I went on their website, and they say they're gonna be open tomorrow for railroad days from 2 to 4 p.m.
Yeah.
But not today, so I don't know if anybody's gonna be around here tomorrow for railroad days. But, and
Yeah,
then,
I'll be back on.
yeah, and also it said that, their normal hours would be 9 a.m. to noon on Fridays only.
Yeah.
That's by appointment other times. And do you have the contact information for her?
I can get it for you, Jack.
Yeah, well, not for me, but just for everybody. in
Yeah, I
general.
can get it for you.
Because I don't know how many pictures there are, and it's just open, so I don't know how accessible everything is. But down the road, that's where some of this stuff is. Most of Lee's stuff has gone and will go to the University of Connecticut. And Laura Smith is a curator up there. I work with her all the time. So it's in good hands there. And Lee, as I say, is almost 90. I don't know if he's gonna make Canaan again or not, but he sent everybody's regards. And if anybody has any other questions about Lee, let me know. That's it. What's next, Rose?
Okay, thank you, Jack. Yeah. Okay, next we will be showing from Millerton to Norfolk.
Yeah.
And this is what we are going to do next year on our Central New England Railroad, except that we are going from Norfolk to Millerton. When we started the presentation, I actually started from Millerton down here. So.